What's up, everybody? We are back. John Delarose here. Delarose.com. That's DELARROZ.com. I've got links to my Amazon page in the description below, as well as my newsletter. I'm a comic creator, so if you want to check out some great indie comics, please go there today. It'd be great. All right, this is Daredevil by Brian Michael Bendis, and this is the Volume 1 Omnibus of his work. It's pretty thick, 600 and something pages. Second volume's a lot thinner, and this takes place basically right after Kevin Smith's run, and there was a restart of Daredevil a couple years prior, and an all-new #1, of course, and that's kind of where Marvel started to push their renumbering schemes over and over again. But Bendis did a pretty long run on Daredevil. It's pretty well hailed, and I decided to read it. It's a quick read. You get a nice little art on the inside of this jacket here. And it covers, it says on the back, covers issues number 16 through 19, 26 through 50, and 56 through 60. Now, there are two fill-in runs in between these spots, which is covered in the Marvel Knights Daredevil Usual Suspects book. So if you want to read all the way through and read Daredevil all the way through like I'm doing, you do have to pick up that volume and make sure to read them in between these here. It's an interesting run. There's some really cool artsy indie sort of work that Alex Maleev does through this stuff. And it starts out with like a kid who's got some psychological trauma, and they're figuring that out, and it has to do with Daredevil getting in a fight with his father, and it's kind of from the perspective of the kid. And Ben Urich from the Daily Bugle, who is doing his thing. I kind of like this art. I found it really appealing at first. It's like, oh, this is kind of neat and different. You get the cool little watercolor effects on here on the colors. You get some kind of hyper realism at points with the figures. You also get some strange, sort of surrealism with the figures, depending on the mood that's being presented of the piece. And it creates an interesting flow for the pages that I really like. I thought it was very fun, especially through this storyline. Now, there's a lot that goes on in this omnibus. Daredevil gets found out by this gal who is also blind, but she kind of recognized his voice and the way he is when he's Daredevil, figured out it was Matt Murdock, and they get together over the course of this volume. There's a mob war going down also, and there's some fill-in artists in between these things too. And the mob war has to do with Wilson Fisk getting killed, and I guess spoiler, and then people trying to scramble to kind of take his place with that. Now, the spoiler comes back later that he, in fact, was not killed. It was a ruse, and Murdoch and company and kind of hunts that down. There's some nice weaving of this in between here with some like FBI agents who are trying to investigate the case. Eventually, Daredevil's gets exposed, and Matt Murdock becomes known as Daredevil over the course of this, and that is what drives the storyline. Now, there's a lawsuit in here where Matt Murdock is suing over the fact that I'm not Daredevil or whatnot, but everybody kind of knows it. The underworld knows it because Fisk knows it, and so it causes complications throughout here. And this was the big controversy out of this run, was like exposing his secret identity and all that, and the fallout from that. Now, there's a lot of fun fallout from that, and you get a lot of good personal detail information on that, which is fun. But what happens is, like, even though the art's cool and you got this cool style that's very indie and very noir and nice by Alex Maleev, you get this Bendis dialogue. You see how there's like so many freaking dialogue balloons on some of these pages. There's pages where it's like a single image and there's like it's just a vomit of dialogue balloons. Now, despite that, most of the story actually progresses pretty quick. You could see that like these are pretty quick pages to flip through. It bogs down in those points, and these characters just love to just like absolute word vomit at points, and that gets kind of old over the course of this volume. And that's usually the problem I've had with Bendis's writing in the past is it tends to bog down in that, and then the plot lines kind of stall out and don't develop fast enough. Definitely happened over the course of this. It was really fun at the beginning, and then I kind of felt like, oh man, I'm trying to turn the pages a little bit faster, and I'm trying to skim through this a lot more than I was at the beginning of this. Now there's a point where Daredevil kind of goes off the rails. All the heroes are kind of like questioning him whether he's kind of cracked from all this stuff, and it time skips to a point in the future where Daredevil actually has become the Kingpin himself, declared himself Kingpin, and declares his place kind of crime free. And so everybody's like, hey, this is not the tack you should be taking with this. And he runs the gambit of like his ex-girlfriends through several issues here with Elektra, Black Widow, and very interesting idea on that front. I would have liked to have seen him actually becoming Kingpin and doing that rather than having the time skip. Bendis does this too on this writing level, which, you know, there's always the trope like show don't tell, and Bendis does a lot of telling, not showing. So while some of the issues are great on this level, and there's a fill-in artist here who does a superhero who ends up getting caught in a bad position, and even though he's innocent, it looks bad for him. So Murdoch has to defend him, and it goes poorly. So this is kind of a dark storyline here as a fill-in. But before it gets back into things again, and it totally just pauses the plot during this fill-in and gets back to it right after. Daredevil ends up getting married again off screen. You find it out through other associates of his. The Owl shows up, and the Owl's kind of running this operation where he's feeding people mutant growth hormone. It's called, which is giving people powers as a drug. Here's some of the dialogue that I was talking about right here. I love the art all the way through. I think it's a cool style. Even though the colors are a bit muted and it's a little on the dark side, it really works for Daredevil. Makes it feel kind of Batman-y. Little Frank Miller-y, right? And I think it does work for the story overall. And eventually, the Kingpin comes back, and we have to deal with the repercussions of all this. Daredevil deals with Bullseye again, his main villain here. And eventually, you know, he realizes he's gone too far and kind of goes back on things. But yeah, the storyline took a little too long, I would say. I would say there were too many pauses in it for word vomiting on the pages, that this could have probably been condensed into about half the issues that it actually was. I would have liked to have seen the conclusion to things be a little more on-screen than off-screen here. But that's what we got for this issue. So Volume 2 closes out Bendis' run, and it goes into Ed Brubaker's work. And eventually, at the end of this, his wife is leaving because of the way that Matt Murdock's kind of been and not been right lately. And of course, everybody's getting attacked all the time because all the villains kind of know his identity at this point. There's a plug for The Pulse. The Pulse, Brian Michael Bendis was writing that, which is a Daily Bugle sort of side magazine thing. And it was from the perspective of all the reporters on that. And you had a little Yakuza shootout towards the end of this where, you know, some people got blamed, but it all got cleaned up by the heroes at the end, sort of. And that's where it leaves off. Some extras in the back, you get some scripting from Brian Michael Bendis. You get to see what that looks like. And you get some layouts done by the team as well. And some different art and variant covers and the like. Overall, I didn't hate it as much as I thought I would. I think the premise and plots were cool. The twist of making Matt Murdock Kingpin, outing his secret identity, that's pretty fresh and interesting. The execution is a little wonky because of the way that Bendis does his dialogue. The art's beautiful, so it's actually a decent read for Daredevil. It's probably a little better than the Kevin Smith stuff, a little better than the end of the Daredevil run that we saw before they actually did the renumbering also. So it's a decent start. There's flaws. that I see and definitely would like to fix. But overall, it's all right. I'd give it a 7.5 out of 10. All right, hit that like and subscribe button. We'll be back soon.